Hey everybody, welcome back to class. Today we are going to be talking about the multiplication principle of equations. Last class we talked about the addition principle, and today we're going to talk about multiplication. So really the same thing we talked about last class, except for now we're going to be talking about multiplication instead of addition. I think you're going to find a lot of the things are the same with the two lessons, except for obviously we're going to be using a different operation with multiplication and division. So just like the addition property was addition and subtraction, this one's going to be multiplication and division. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. This is on page 50 in your book, 51, right in there, lesson 2.2. So if we have something that looks like this, if I have 2x equals 6. Now, last lesson we had an addition or subtraction problem going on. In this lesson, we see that this right here is multiplication. Now, how are we going to deal with that? Well, we're going to deal with it the same way. So if we're multiplying, we still have to think, okay, I've got to get the letters on one side and I've got to get the numbers to the other side. So I've got to get, sometimes I'll put, okay, this is my letter side and this is my number side. Okay, so my equal sign is the things that divide it. So if it's not a number, then it has to go over here. And if it's not a letter, it would go over here. So anything that's not a number can stay. Anything that is a number has to go over here. That's the way this works. So you can think of it that way. One problem that students have a lot of times, though, when they think of it that way, is the problem of like the number could never be on the other side. Well, sometimes you could have like this, 6 equals 2x, and you could make this the letter side and this the number side, and that's fine to do. And so I don't want you to think that, oh, the number side always has to be on the right and the letter side always has to be on the left, because that's not true. Okay, so it can go both ways and it can move around. But to make it easier in your mind, think about, okay, I've got to have numbers on one side and I've got to have letters on the other side. Okay, all right, so let's look at this. What do we want to do here? Well, if we're multiplying by 2, we need to do the opposite. We need to divide by 2. What happens when you divide by 2? Well, it cancels out. Or, I mean, you get a 1 technically, but 1x is the same as not putting anything. You don't get a 0. And with addition and subtraction, you get zeros, which means nothing. And you can think of it this way. You can think of it as the identity. Okay, so you want it to be 1. Basically, you're inverting it. We've talked about some of those other things now. So we're going to divide by 2, and that's going to cancel, and we're going to get x on that side. However, what we do to the one side, we also have to do to the other side. So you have to divide now. So x equals, what is 6 divided by 2? Well, it's 3. So there's our answer. X equals 3. Now we have all of the letters on one side, all of the numbers on the other side, and that's our answer. Let's check it. We have to check it. So we would go ahead and plug the 3 back in for the x. So we'd have 2 times 3 equals 6. Always plug it back into the original, which was that right there. 2 times 3 is 6 equals 6, and that checks. That means that we did it right. All right, let's look at another example here. Really, it's just kind of the same process going over and over again, and but there's some differences here. So let's look at this one. What happens when we have a division? So x divided by 0.2. Okay, so we have a decimal, equals 3. Now, just like I told you before, if we are multiplying, we have to divide. Well, what are we doing now? We're dividing. That's a fraction. Fractions mean division, so we're dividing. So if we divide by 0.2, then we have to multiply by 0.2. Now watch this. And you could do it over 1 if you want to, which is fine because you're actually doing a fraction. Now watch what happens. This is going to cancel, And so everything becomes 1 over here. 1 times x equals x. So that's how we cancel out in division. We multiply by the denominator. Whatever the denominator is, we multiply by that, and that cancels out the fraction. Equals, remember our balance, our idea of the balance. So if we did something to the left side, we also have to do something over here to the right side. So we were dividing on this side, so we had to multiply by 0.2. So what we're going to do over here is we're also going to have to multiply by 0.2. Now, I know what 3 times 2 is. But in my mind, 3 times 0.2, okay, I can do that, and I can multiply like this and get 6. Don't forget there's a point there, so it's going to be 0.6. But remember, in algebra, if you're not confident with those types of answers, we'll come up here, pull up your calculator, and just do 3 times 0.2 equals 0.6. And so you can always use your calculator. No matter how simple the math is, no matter how complicated the math is, you can always pull up your calculator and go ahead and do it there. Well, so here we go. 0.6. Okay, and that's our answer. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to come over here. Let me erase this. And we are going to want to check this to make sure that we did it right. So we'll go back into the original. Let me erase some of this green stuff up here so you can see the original problem. We're going to go back into the original problem, and we are going to put the 0.6 in for the x. So we're going to get 0.6 divided by 0.2 equals 3. Now this is, again, where maybe it gets a little complicated for you with the math. So we can pull up the calculator. 0.6 divided by 0.2. 0.6 divided by 0.2 equals 3. There you go. And so our calculator told us that we were correct. And so we got 3 equals 3. And that does check. All right. So if you don't feel comfortable, I mean, I can do this math in my head, and I know a lot of you can. But if you don't feel like you can do it in your head, because you got to move the decimal over and you got to do some other things in order to get the number 3 there, or you could just do it on the piece of paper that you're using, or you can use your calculator. It doesn't matter to me. All right, so that's the second example that we'll do today. Let's do another example. Let's try, okay, this one's interesting. Now we're going to be multiplying by a fraction. 2/3 x equals 8. 2/3 x equals 8. All right. Now, there are 2 different ways that you can look at this, and I'm going to show you that both ways will work. One way is to say, okay, look, I'm dividing by 3, and you're correct. You could actually write this 2x divided by 3, and it's fine. You're not changing the value, okay? Why not? Because you're multiplying, so if you put this over 1 and you multiply, you get 2x over 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, so it's not changing the value there. So you can look at that and you can say, okay, I am dividing by 3. Okay, I'm going to do it both ways. So if I say that, I'm dividing by 3. So let's multiply by 3, and that's going to cancel, and we're going to get 2x equals, if we did one side, we got to do the other side. 8 times 3 is 24. Now we have to divide by 2, and if we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other side, and we're going to get 12. X equals 12. So that's one way to do that. All right, now let's look at a different way to do that. And that's kind of got a couple different steps there. And you can rewind that and watch it again. I went a little bit fast on that. That is not the way I typically do it, but maybe that's the way you're going to like to do it, because that's actually working with whole numbers. I like working with fractions a little bit better. And so here's what I say. I say, okay, 2/3 times x, because 2/3 is in front of the x, so it's times. And so I have to divide both sides by 2/3. Okay, well, I'm going to show you what happens here when we do this, just so you believe me. If I take 2/3 and divide by 2/3, In division, remember, we have to flip the second fraction and multiply. Cancel 1, everything cancels to a 1, we get 1x. Okay? Or in other words, that whole thing cancels. Everything over there cancels out. So I'll just go ahead and cancel it since I showed you how to do it. And you can be confident that that's going to happen every time. You can practice it a few times, and then you're going to be like, I'm wasting my time dividing all that out. It's just going to cancel every single time, okay? And so now we end up with x equals this. Well, this one we do have to actually do the math. And so we can go 8 over 1 divided by 2/3. Remember, you got to flip it, the second one, and change it to multiply. 1, 4, cross canceling. 4 times 3 is 12 over 1, or 12. And we got 12 last time when we did it the other way, and we got 12 again this time. Why? Because we did the same thing, only we did it just a little bit different. Okay? Instead of looking at it as dividing by 3, we looked at it as, okay, now we're multiplying by 2/3. And it's the same thing. It comes out the same. We combined the steps, really. If you like fractions, if you like working with fractions, then this is the way for you. If you don't like working with fractions so much, then the other way, the first way that I did it, is probably better for you. So figure out which way works best for you, and then go ahead and go with that. Now, obviously, I can substitute that back in, and let's do that. Let's go ahead and check one of these. I know my time's almost up on this video. It's okay. I'm trying to take about 15 minutes on each video or less, and I know sometimes I go a little bit over, but I'm trying my best. Trust me. All right, so I'm going to take that 12 and plug that into our original. Make sure we get rid of some of this yellow here so we can see where our original was. And this is our original, 2/3 x, or times 12. Notice I had to put the parentheses. Why? Because it's multiplication. And when we can't just sandwich the numbers next to it, or it's going to look weird. So there we go. And now we're just going to go ahead and do it. So that cancels to a 4. 2 times 4 is 8 over 1 equals 8, or just 8 equals 8. And that is correct. That checks. All right. And you would do the same thing, like on a mixed number. Like let's say this was 3 2/3, for example. Well, the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is just to change it into an improper fraction. In fact, in algebra, improper fractions are better than mixed numbers. They're easier to work with. So what I would do is I would just say, well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11 over 3. And then I would just work my equation with 11 over 3. That's how to do it if you have a mixed number in there. With negatives, it's going to be the same thing. Let's show you a quick example of a negative. Negative 3x equals 12. I'll put a real simple one on there. So you're just going to divide by negative 3 and divide by negative 3. That's going to cancel out, and we're going to get x equals negative 4. So you just follow your rules of positive and negative numbers there. Okay? All right, I think that's all I have for you. Let me check one more thing. Yeah, that's it. All right, well, you guys have a good rest of the day. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you learned something today. See you later.